Hello, this is Jerry from Quilt Crazy. Often I see questions on the Qbot forums about calibration. What is it? How do I do it? Is mine right? Etc. With the addition of heavy-duty wire and super heavy-duty wire, it became necessary to calibrate the wires to your frame if you're using either of these two special wires. Lighten Up, the Cubot folks produced a short video a couple years ago explaining how to accomplish this. I'll go through a quick way to check your calibration to see if it needs to be recalibrated. Now this process is the same whether you're using version 3 or version V3 Pro. With a quilt already on your frame, pin down a cloth tape measure to your quilt running horizontally along the x-axis. Keep the tape parallel to your belly bar, or at least fairly close, but don't get too crazy about making it exactly parallel. Set your side tension clamps tight so that the quilt will not move one way or the other during its process. In the picture, you can see what I've explained. I've also pinned down a second tape measure to the y-axis, up and down on the quilt. It doesn't matter where horizontally you choose to pin the y-axis tape, just that it is vertical. Now you can only calibrate the x-axis, which is why it's important that you always use the same size wire on your y-axis motor as you do on your x-axis motor. We'll switch now to a screen with both the Cubot program as well as a camera view of the needle depressor foot. For this test, I'm going to use the Cubot laser pointer. It's going to be of a great assistance, makes it much more accurate. Oh, you do have the laser, right? If you don't, you really should look into getting Lighten Up's laser. It's a focused, bright, nice, well-made laser that works really well. Not only does it make your points much more accurate in selecting, but if you're doing inner boundaries or reference points for lining up rows and columns, it makes it really simple and really easy. We're going to start by selecting pattern quilting. If you're using a laser, that's great, but it's not necessary. And it's not necessary in this process to select the button that says use offset. Since we're only measuring distance, we're not measuring specific places on the quilt, it's not really necessary. So you can use it or not use it, it doesn't really matter. First thing you want to do is move your quilting head to the 0 on your tape measure. So we'll do that here. And again, since I'm using the laser, you notice that the foot isn't at 0, but the laser spot is at 0. So once we get there, we're going to select the point. Now you'll notice that when we selected a point, the delta X and the delta Y numbers turn to 0. This is what's going to help us do this process. So what we're going to do, move the head across the tape and stop at some distance. Let's say in this case, we're going to stop at 10 inches. And if you look at the delta X numbers, and you'll see that it's at, in this case, 10.01. So it's 1/100th of an inch off of 10 inches. And it's likely because of where exactly I put the laser at the beginning of the tape. We'll move it down the quilt and select another spot a little bit further down. In this case, we'll stop at 40 inches. And you'll see that we're again 1/100th of an inch off. Since the quilt that I have on this happens to be fairly wide, we'll go down to one more. We'll go down to 70 and check it again. Get this right on 70, and you'll see that we're 19/100th of an inch off. That's at 70 inches. So that's not too shabby. That is an amount that I would not worry about. So we know that the x-axis calibration is fine. So let's go through and check our y-axis calibration. So we'll move it down to where we've got the vertical tape. And you notice that I did not set a secondary point, because every time you set a point, the delta x and delta y is going to go to 0. So I'm going to move it here so that my laser is right at the beginning of the tape. And I'm going to set a point in order to reset my delta x and delta y numbers. Now I'm going to watch the delta y number as I move it down the tape. We'll move it down to 6 inches. And you notice that we're at 5.95 or 5/100ths of an inch. Again, it depends on where the 0 was when I started. We took it down to 12 inches. And you'll see it's 2/100ths of an inch off. Not too bad. Now, you're limited to whatever your throat length is on your machine. This is a 18-inch machine, and it didn't start the tape all at the very top. So on this particular one, I can only get about 14 inches. So we got about at 14 with a laser. I'm at 0.93 of an inch. So my y-axis is in calibration fine. If these numbers are off very much, then what you'll want to do is recalibrate them. I'll do a separate video on a way to calibrate them across a very long distance, and watch the one that's done by Cubot. It's really an easy process, doesn't take very long, and it really helps in getting things lined up. I hope this was of use to you. Again, this is Jerry from Quilt Crazy. Thanks and bye now.